According to the Los Angeles Times, Waters has become Auntie Maxine on the left, a folk hero beloved for her wisdom and sassy ways. Okay, so here's some actual tape of Auntie Maxine from just the other day describing Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Judge for yourself.
I think that Jeff Sessions is very dangerous. I think he's a racist, and I think that he absolutely believes that it's his job to keep minorities in their place, that he comes from a time and a place in his history where this was the order of the day.
So Maxine Waters is calling someone else a racist, huh? Well, luckily we have long memories on the show, long enough to recall the LA riots of 1992. Do you remember those? 58 people died. Many more were gravely injured, including a man called Reginald Denny. He was a truck driver who happened to be at the wrong intersection at the wrong time, and more than anything, the wrong color. Because of his race, Denny was pulled from his truck and smashed in the head with a cinder block until he sustained brain damage. It was a hate crime if there ever was one. It all happened on videotape. A helicopter caught it, and it happened in Maxine Waters' city. But she did not denounce the attack. On the contrary, she all but endorsed the attack. The leader of the mob that nearly murdered Reginald Denny was called Damian Williams. Now, Maxine Waters visited Damian Williams' mother to offer her support. Williams was sent to prison on a single felony charge of mayhem, but when his accomplices got off, Waters joined in the celebration. Damian Williams was released a few years later and went on to murder somebody else in 2000. He's still in prison today. But Waters did not learn a thing from the experience. She went on to describe the LA race riots as, quote, a rebellion, and in ways understandable, including apparently the part about smashing people's brains in for being the wrong color. Yep, that's the Democratic Party's new expert on race relations. So we invited Congressman Waters onto the show. We've done it many times. She's never agreed to come on. So instead, we needed someone with a little more bravery, and we found it in Monique Presley. She's an attorney from here in D.C., and she joins us tonight. Monique, thank you for being bold enough to come on.
Oh, it's not that scary.
Yeah, I don't think it is at all. But I'm not saying that Maxine Waters should be in prison. I am saying that given that history, she shouldn't be in Congress, she shouldn't be defended by her colleagues, and she certainly shouldn't be weighing in on race relations. That puts her outside the pale. Endorsing violence that's the line, and she crossed it.
Right. Well, I don't know if we'd have our current president if that was the line.
Has he endorsed racial violence?
Because he's endorsed violence, he's promoted violence, he's promulgated violence from his pulpit.
There is, if you can name an instant where the current president had, like, I don't know, that horrible shooter down in South Carolina, if he had visited that guy's family to offer his condolences, that would be, that's just not acceptable in American life. And he's done nothing like that.
Perhaps stood in front of thousands of people and said there was a day when that person would have been taken somewhere and
the South Carolina guy?
I mean, how many different, I was about to call them protests, but they weren't. They were rallies. How many different rallies were there where people were put out for doing what it is their right to do, which is protesting, and we had from then candidate Trump, now President Trump, an insistence upon the fact that the people in the crowd were right to cheer, to want them thrown out. So what I'm saying
is your argument
that's
that
not the line.
That's not the line. So it's okay now is what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that it's okay. What I'm saying is that you said if a person was willing to support or encourage
racial violence, yes.
Violence is what you said, that
I'm saying that
they don't deserve to be in office.
I'm saying that there are a lot of things that we say that's bigoted, that's racist, whatever, and we can debate what those are. But if you have a person who was nearly murdered simply because of the color of his skin, any color, you can't congratulate that person in effect. And she did. And so I'm just saying she's gotten away with that for 25 years. That's a very different thing from what you're describing at the Trump rallies. Not my job to defend Trump's statements at those rallies, but it's not even in the same category as what Maxine Waters did. And my only point is, how can she be a folk hero on the left if she did something like that?
Right. And I guess what I was saying is I don't understand how President Trump can be president of the United States for the many and sundry things that he's done. But our voters are the ones who decide who should and should not be in office. So when you're saying how can someone be in office, the answer to that always is that unless...
I'm not asking that question.
You're saying
I think
they
that
don't deserve to be in office.
I'm not saying that. I'm not arguing against democracy.
But you did say that she didn't deserve to be in office.
I don't think she ought to be in office, but what I really don't think is that she ought to have the adulation or even the cover of her colleagues, fellow Democrats, and I find it inexplicable that she would be held up as some sort of fountain of wisdom on racial matters. much less she'd be allowed to call someone else racist. That's my point.
I don't even know that she's held up as a fountain of wisdom on racism, and that is why people, especially young people, millennials, call her Auntie Maxine. I prefer to call her Congresswoman Waters. But what I'm saying is that the people on the left have reasons. They believe that she is a listener to the issues of the day, and I think that that's correct. And then I also think that she has a right to say what she thinks. And in the clip that you played, she said, I think this, and I think that.
These are straw men, as you know. I'm not contesting anyone's right to say what he or she thinks or to run for office or be elected. Obviously, I'm not a liberal, so therefore I believe in free speech and democracy. But let me just ask, again, a really simple question. We're at a moment of maximum political tension where people are really starting to hate each other. I think we're moving toward like a real separation in this country.
You think we're moving toward
I do
one?
think that. I do
from
think that.
where?
I think things are getting too intense, is my point.
Here's
the point I'm making.
Were they less intense 200 years ago?
Look,
were they less intense 100 years ago?
Right now,
in the
and
60s,
for someone like Maxine Waters, see what you're doing is you're saying, you know what, Pol Pot killed a lot of people, therefore I'm not going to condemn this. Simply because something else was bad doesn't mean that we don't have the right to describe what we're watching as bad. And I'm saying to call the Attorney General as a racist with no evidence is insane.
You can describe it as bad, but I'm actually listening to what you're saying, and what you said is that we're moving towards something, and I think that if you look at the continuum of our history, that's just not true.
Okay. If we could end the history lecture really quick. Look, we could debate this, and I think it's a valid question. My only point is, look, things are getting super intense, and it's bad. It's bad for the country, and at some point, people are going to get hurt if it doesn't decelerate. And she's adding to it. That's true.
I think what things are getting is vocalized. I think that people who were once marginalized and oppressed now have a voice, and they're using it, and the manner in which they use it, whether on the right or on the left, is a way that offends some. I think that it would be nice.
Racist at somebody, which is the new motif on the left, is not a discussion. You're not adding to the sum total of anything. You're detracting.
Racism is new. I think calling someone a racist when they are one may be new, in that there was a time when people who were treated disproportionately negatively because of their color.
Look, it's too irresponsible to just run around and to cast blood libel on people without evidence. That's all I'm saying.
It's not blood libel, and it's not lacking in evidence. If you look at the comments she made about Attorney General Sessions, they weren't based on zero evidence. I think that racism, if you look at it by definition, it's determined not by what your private thoughts are, by what your public actions are. So when you look at someone just since he's been Attorney General,
I can't even,
Texas voter ID laws,
that's a totally
immigration.
You know what? I think I'm rising to your bait because the things you're saying are so false, and I guess I'm just too caught up in this whole like linear detail thing. The Texas Texas ID controversy.
The minute he gets in office, he
has nothing to do with race. There's no way to back up what you just said.
Except
it's just
for
false.
that the courts, 4 different ones, and then finally found not just discriminatory effect, but discriminatory intent. Well, if the courts got it wrong, I support them.
They did, and they can't support it with the numbers.
Well, I guess
we did the numbers on the show.
We'll find out in the Supreme Court.
Right. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
I was glad to be.
Chicago, no doubt, Rahm Emanuel not pleased. Ben Markey for the Conservative Tribune reports that running in part as the law and order candidate, President Donald Trump routinely referred to the out-of-control crime in Chicago as the country's worst example of the status quo, and even suggested that he'd send in the feds shortly after his inauguration if Chicago authorities didn't start fixing things themselves. Well, according to WGN, it would seem that Trump just fulfilled that promise to bolster the federal law enforcement presence in the crime-ridden city that has been experiencing gang warfare and gun violence at epidemic proportions. Well, yes, it has been a long time coming. Here is Donald Trump's Twitter post from January where he said, if Chicago doesn't fix the horrible carnage going on, 228 shootings in 2017, 42 killings, up 24%, from 2016, I will send in the feds. Well, looks like on Friday, Donald Trump tweeted out that the crime and killings in Chicago have reached such epidemic proportions, he said, I'm sending in federal help. 1,714 shootings this year. So how are those gun laws working out for you, Rahm? Working pretty well, eh? 1,700 shootings this year? Yeah, you should be ashamed of yourself, Rahm. Absolutely ashamed. But, of course, you have security protection, so what do you really care, right? Yes, Trump tweeted out, crime and killings in Chicago reach epidemic proportions, sending in the feds. Chicago Sun-Times, they put a number on the shootings in the city so far at 1,737, 300 of them fatal. They reported, it was confirmed on Thursday, that an additional 20 agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives will be sent to Chicago to help in the effort of cracking down on gun crime and repeat criminals who routinely commit such crimes. Those 20 will be joining 30 to 45 agents already working in the city, taking part in the formation of a special strike force made up of an equal number of individuals hailing from the Chicago Police Department, the Illinois State Police, and federal and local prosecutors. So, Rahm Emanuel, epic failure to Chicago. But sure, like I said, he's surrounded by guards. He's protected. The people in Chicago, gun laws, yeah, working out real well. So what are your thoughts? Comment below. Subscribe for updates. If you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up and share this report.